Number 5.
What is the name of the idiot who ran in the end zone for Cincinnati? That is not getting enough attention, okay? The Bengals need everything to go their way to win. That's how they kept on winning. And when they make that pick with 2 minutes left in the half, they have the chance for the best thing you can have as a team. When you are getting the kickoff to start the second half, Belichick has made a career out of doing this. You get that late score at the end of the first half, then you turn around, you score again in the second half. It changes the entire game. They're going to get the ball off a touchback. It is going to be 2 minutes. They're going to have an opportunity and a quick 2-minute offense. And instead, this idiotic penalty, that's one of the worst penalties I've ever seen. This guy runs into the end zone wearing a pair of slides and trying to keep his phone from falling out of the pocket of his shorts. It runs into the end zone and winds up getting a 15-yard penalty, which completely changes the dynamic of that situation. Now the Bengals are just trying to run the clock out for dear life. They don't even think about trying to score. They wind up punting. The Rams have a chance. They don't wind up scoring. So people might look at that and say, oh, well, no harm. The Rams didn't score. Bull feathers. That is a major circumstance there. The Bengals have a chance to try and put together a drive there. I think that play is not getting enough attention. People are just paying attention to how stupid it is and not enough attention to how potentially costly it was, Hembo.
Yeah, I mean, the player's name was Vernon Hargreaves, who I did not know he was on the Bengals. He was traded there mid-season. I researched this morning. It's not like this is Boomer Esiason that's a legacy player for the franchise. Right. I mean, this is just some rando. And in what world is that okay? Like, if that happens in the preseason, you get stomped on. Like, it's the Super Bowl, dude. I'm with you. It was unimaginably stupid.
No. I mean, what should one say about that?
He's probably going to be unemployed for a bit now.
I mean, that's just the worst. That's just the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. All right, my takes.
Number 4.
If Odell doesn't get hurt, the Rams win that game by 3 touchdowns. The Odell injury changes the game completely. Now, I picked the Bengals to win, and so I started out the game rooting for them for that reason. And then as the game went on, I found myself rooting for them like crazy. I just got into the story and whatever. But I had my nephew and my wife with me watching the game yesterday. I said, Odell is going to tear this game up. And it doesn't take a genius to see that, right? He was on his way to a monster day. And then when he grabs that knee, it changes the entire game. All of a sudden, they're doubling Kupp the rest of the day. Kupp is no factor until the last drive of the game. They wound up with Skoranek out there. I know everything about Ben Skoranek because he started his career at Northwestern, was a very good player for us for several years. Then he transferred for his final year to Notre Dame. So whenever they talk about him on TV, you hear them say he's from Notre Dame. But he played most of his collegiate ball at Northwestern and was very good. He's a big physical receiver. But he ain't Odell Beckham. That's for darn sure. So I think, do you agree with me that Odell was on his way to a huge day and it would have made the task for the Bengals defense bordering on impossible?
I think so. I mean, he got hurt on the 5th drive of the game for them. They scored a touchdown on 2 of their first 4, and they had averaged 7 yards a play. We're talking about prolific offense at that time, and if the Rams would have wound up losing that game, I think we would have looked back on that moment as perhaps the biggest reason why.
What did you think of that, Bubba? Your thoughts on Odell getting injured in the way he did it and the moment he did?
Oh, I mean, it was just brutal to watch. And I know I agree with you. He was coming off his best game as a Ram already. It really seems like he was finally being the player that everyone expected him to be for the last couple of years. And he was well on his way to having a great game, and it was just brutal to see him get hurt.
By the way, it was crazy that his touchdown yesterday tied his total from his career in Cleveland. He scored 7 with the Rams and 7 in his entire tenure with the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, wow. And he's a free agent this offseason, too, so that's brutal.
Number 3.
The Bengals cannot complain about the officiating, and the Cincinnati fan cannot complain today about the officiating because the touchdown that you score on the first play of the second half is blatant. I mean, I don't even know what to say. T. Higgins literally grabbed, you don't need me to tell you what he did. He grabs Jalen Ramsey's face mask and turns him around and catches a 75-yard touchdown, and somehow that's not called. So I cannot sit here and complain about the officiating if I'm the Bengals. But the phantom call on that third down near the goal line on that last drive that gives them a fresh set of downs after they hadn't called anything in the game is a monster play. And it's a terrible call. Terrible. The holding in the end zone right before the touchdown that puts it on the 1, that's a good call. That was Eli Apple holding Cooper Kupp. I have no problem with that. They called it interference, I think, because the ball was in the air. But that is a good call. But that third down play, it is going to be fourth down. They are going, if they get one more defensive stop there, then the Rams are going to have to use all their timeouts. I mean, the Bengals are at that point, I don't know what the analytics would tell you, they're going to be in like the 70-80% range of winning the Super Bowl if that call is not made, and it was a terrible call.
What's curious about it, too, is that I was texting with friends throughout the game. We were refreshed at how clean the game was. Like, they were just letting them play football, which you never get to see in the NFL now. And then at the worst possible time, I mean, they could call that play on literally any pass play in the game. I'm with you. If I were a Bengals fan, I would be devastated by that call. I think the subsequent ones were right, but based upon the way that they were calling the game, that was the wrong call.
Do you agree with my framing of it, though, that you really can't blame the officiating because you got away with one that was even worse?
For sure, but it happening that late in the game, in that moment, it still wouldn't make me feel any better.
All right, fair enough. Now,
number 2.
Next up is Cooper Kupp. He put the finishing touches yesterday on one of the greatest seasons ever. And our friend Field Yates posted these numbers on Twitter. He played 21 games, so it's one more game than anyone has ever had a chance to play, but still. Here are his final numbers. 178 catches for 2,425 yards and 22 touchdowns. He led the NFL. He won the receiving triple crown, so catches, yards, and touchdowns. He was a unanimous All-Pro. He caught more balls in the postseason than any player ever in any single postseason with 33. He was named the NFL's Offensive Player of the Year and the Super Bowl MVP. That's the greatest season any receiver has ever had, right?
For sure.
I mean, Jerry Rice was Super Bowl MVP, but that's the best season when you put it all together ever.
You mentioned that he obviously had one more game than anyone else did, but let's keep in mind that total, 2,400 some odd yards, is 448 more yards than any player had ever had before. No one had even had 2,000 in a single season, including the playoffs, and he had 400 some odd yards more than that.
I'm thinking about Rice because Rice would have played one less regular season game and frequently one less playoff game. Right. He would have had byes and all that kind of stuff. So he would have probably played most of his Super Bowl years. They would have played 19 games and Kupp played 21.
But even so, Rice's highest single season total, including the playoffs, was 1965. That's not close to Cooper.
He is 500 yards behind him almost.
Even on a per-game basis, he's not there.
So Kupp was spectacular, but
number 1.
I can't believe Aaron Donald didn't win the MVP. They love giving the MVP to defensive players. They love it. Look back over the history of defense. I mean, when the Bears won the Super Bowl, they gave the MVP to Hampton and Dent, right? Did they split it, or did Dent win it? I forget who won it that year, but they definitely gave it to Dent, and I can't remember it. There was one year they shared it. One year maybe the Cowboys won it. They gave it to 2 defenders. They live to give the MVP of the Super Bowl to defensive players when they can. How in the world is Aaron Donald not the most valuable player on that field yesterday? I don't get it. Who won the MVP when the Bears won Super Bowl 20?
That was Dent, and he won it by himself.
Just Dent. Okay, fair enough. So they give Dent the MVP that year. I mean, you could have given it to anybody. You could have given it to the entire defense if you wanted to. I know Ray Lewis was the MVP of a Super Bowl. They love it. How could you be more valuable in a game than Aaron Donald was yesterday? I mean, again, I'm not going to sit here and say it's an outrage. I mean, Kupp certainly is a reasonable choice. He was all over the field on that last drive. But prior to that, I thought the story of the game was how they had kind of taken Kupp away. Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.